podcast that floats down here.
Hi, I'm Melissa, your Stephen King veteran.
Hi, I'm Ben, the Stephen King and horror film fanboy.
And hello, I'm Luke, your first-time Stephen King reader.
So surprised every time. Oh, it's my turn to talk. Hi, all. We are here discussing Stephen King's The Outsider. Upside down. No, it's upside down to me, but I'm good. The Outsider. This was published. I did not do any homework for this, by the way, so I'm flying by the seat of my pants. This was published in 2018. It is 561 pages, and as Luke inserted, because Luke does that every time, like I learned last month. It is 18 hours and 41 minutes of audible time for those of you who listen to the slowpoke speed of 1x speed. This book is dedicated, it's a small one this time. The book dedication is for Rand and Judy Holston. That's all, just dedicated for them. And I am with two of my favorite brothers. Hi, boys.
Hey, I guess that's us this time.
Yes, you're two.
It goes in cycles.
Yeah, we're 50% of your favorite brothers.
That is accurate. Yes. And I just got water delivered to me. Thank you.
Wow.
My husband, who has never before been seen on live YouTube.
If
and
Dire Poe was
remains
useful,
aloof
Dire Poe could
and
deliver me
elusive. He's
something.
back upstairs.
We got a hand. We got a hand, oh Bob.
And an influence of Bob with the
Makes
Beatles cup.
sense. Makes sense.
All right. Anyway, boys, how are you tonight?
Doing well, doing well.
Two
Excited
thumbs
for this.
way up. I'm excited. I'm feeling great. There he is. I should go get my thing. That was my Mickey ear replacement for Disney.
Oh, nice.
The Hades Flames.
Great. Okay, back cover synopsis. I feel like we actually read a lot of this on the last episode to pump us up and be ready, which was great. So here we go. This is bad behavior. I wouldn't have expected it of you. A living nightmare has come to Flint City, Oklahoma, as an 11-year-old boy is found brutally murdered in a local park. An unspeakable crime that rocks local law enforcement to its core as the most heinous atrocity anyone there had ever witnessed. Equally stunning is the identity of the prime suspect, Terry Maitland, one of Flint City's most popular citizens, as well as Little League coach, English teacher, and devoted husband and father. Detective Ralph Anderson, whose own son Maitland once coached, orders a quick and very public arrest. Multiple eyewitnesses and irrefutable evidence means it's an ironclad case until the investigation expands and horrifying new details begin to emerge. Terry Maitland seems like a nice guy, but is he wearing another face? When the answer is revealed, it will shock you as only master storyteller Stephen King can.
And if you're new here, welcome. Thank you for stopping by. We kindly ask you to subscribe. If you've been here before, thanks for coming back. I don't know why you did, but thanks. No.
They're here to
So-
hear. They're here because of your wonderful voice that you have brought to our recording tonight.
Yeah, this is actually the best I've sounded in over a week now. I had a nice little sinus infection that basically eradicated my vocal cords. Well, that and then late Friday night decided to stay up drinking with a couple of my brothers, singing as loud as I can, and that didn't help on a cool farm front night. So those two things combined.
I do have video of a lot of that. So
Oh, I'm sure. Well, we needed it because we needed to remember the lyrics, but I mean, it wasn't needed. Anyway.
So we're going to talk about the book.
Yes. So anyway, so I was kind of going to give a quick rundown of the first third, which, yes, Melissa?
I was just going to see how did you guys feel about the back first.
Oh, the back.
Sorry.
Well, that kind of ties into how do I feel about the first third? Because
look at us being on the
that's-
same page.
kind of where I was thinking, Luke, or do you agree with that?
yeah,
We,
the back.
we don't care what Luke says. Just go. We say yes.
So yeah, so the first third of the book is basically a very crime-ridden procedural breakdown. You're given scenes of the detective Ralph interviewing eyewitnesses who saw the baseball coach doing several odd things. First, picking up a boy, Frankie, in a white van. Then later seeing him come from a park where Frankie's body is later found to have been mutilated and violated in several different ways. He's seen come from the park right after that, covered in blood. He then drives to a parking lot, switches out cars, drives to a strip club, gets in a taxi cab, makes sure that he is seen by multiple people who recognize him on the spot, and then goes on about his business. Police officer, as it's mentioned, follows these leads, and this is all intertwined while we also hear about them heading to the baseball field to find the Coach T, Terry. And they, instead of doing the proper thing of interviewing him first and saying, hey, we have some questions, can you come in? Keep it hush hush. Nope. In front of 1,500 people, not 2,000, 1,500 people, they made sure to loudly proclaim he's under arrest for the murder and defilement of that young boy, handcuff him, and frog march him off in front of everybody, which leads to pretty much breaking down Terry's story. Terry was 70 miles away in Capital City on that day with three witnesses.
Before we get his
Yes.
full actual, like what he is saying his alibi is, right?
Yes.
You already pretty much said it. It feels very crime, drama, procedural. And in my first note here, I just wrote, the intro opening of this book just feels a lot like a Dick Wolf production. Like, dun dun. Like, we're about to get Law and Ordered up in here. I mean, SVU, Ice Cube, Ice T's gonna.
You can see
up.
the 2500 Street, 9 p.m.
Right, yeah.
Like you can see the title cards coming up, as they're reading it.
Absolutely.
And so yeah, absolutely.
You're gonna catch him. I never thought you'd ask. I'm gonna use a dragon net.
Dragon
What?
net, yeah.
Sorry.
What's the 10? What's the 1012? What's the 1012?
It's a 412.
412.
412. What's a 412? Overacting.
Overacting.
Let's go.
So we get Terry's. They arrest him. Everything. Pull him in. Terry's like, I'm not saying a word till I get my lawyer. I'm not saying a word till I get my lawyer. What's the smart thing to do? It doesn't matter if you're guilty or not. Always get a fucking lawyer. Hands down. Always. Don't say a fucking word. But so we get the story, and Terry was in Capital City, 70 miles away on that day, speaking at a conference with a book writer, with a novelist that they're all fans of and everything. And there's video proof. And later we find there's fingerprint proof that Terry was there. But there's also fingerprints in the van that was used and on the weapon used. There's blood and semen left all around of Terry's at the crime scene. So who do you believe? What happens? Then we get to arraignment day. And this is only 3 days. Like he was arrested on Saturday. Arraignment's Monday morning. Monday morning, come to arraignment. They do the whole pomp and circumstances, give him the perp walk, everything. And this is after they're already doubting themselves and everything, but they're still doing the perp walk and take it down. And the little kid's brother ends up shooting Harry right in front of everybody.
The little kid's mother had already died of a heart attack in between those two things.
Yes. Sorry, it is a dense book. So there's a lot going on.
A lot going on.
So, but that's quite literally the first third of the book.
It's
That's
just
6
the
hours
opening.
in. And that's just the opening. So, like, you want to delve into that kind of thing? Luke said, like you said, very procedural. My note on the opening was I absolutely loved it. Very procedural. My only issue that I had, my main issue I had with the book is I wanted to see the trial. I wanted to see how is the defense attorney and how are the prosecuting attorney gonna battle this out, because Howie is the defense attorney and I'm trying to think the prosecutor, his name, but like neither were budging. Neither were gonna budge. And I'm like, okay, as a crime drama fan, I'm like, oh, that's gonna be good. And I think they could have done almost the rest of the entire story.
Bill Samuels.
Bill Samuels. He was the
Bill
ADA.
Samuels, yeah. Yes, thank you. I kind of think they could have done the entire rest of the story with everything else while the trial build was going. Like, let
Not
you know,
kill off Terry, let it just kind of.
like he's sitting in jail waiting for the trial to start because don't go that fast. They're not going to do arraignment and then trial starts next week. You're going to have months and whatever. So give it some time to let other stuff play out. And then you can do the big reveal of, hey, here's what happened, and do the Matlock kind of, or Columbo style, I found this piece of evidence thing at the last moment. I would have loved seeing that over, just killing Terry off. But as I told Luke, I got Georgied. I was all in on Terry. I was like, all right, let's go. Let's see how this goes. Terry's a good guy. He's a good dude. But did he do it? And if he didn't, because I was also wondering that, like, was that going to be the twist?
Yeah.
Did he actually do it?
I mean, is he Brady Hartsfielding it somehow? Right? I mean, is there some way that he is in both places doing these things? I was open to all theories at this point. Like it could go anywhere.
See, I went with there's no way it was Terry. Guarantee it wasn't Terry. But it wasn't.
I was definitely leaning that way if I had to pick, but I could have. You had to run down the rational thoughts of, well, I mean, maybe we're getting Fight Clubbed as well, that he doesn't know that he's doing, or some kind of.
They don't know that we know that they know that we know.
It could have gone anywhere from where that point was.
Yeah.
Which I thought was exciting. I thought it was.
I loved it.
Really
and I loved
intriguing.
Terry. I loved Terry. So Ben, I get your theory about like wanting the trial, but killing him, that's when I was like I was in already. Like I was invested and I enjoyed it. And I was like, oh, I like this. And there's no way it's Terry, but I also really liked Ralph. And I was like, oh, okay, right, the detective guy. And I was like, I am in. And then Terry died. And I was like, holy shit. There goes my main character. And you're right. It's like Georgie, except instead of a chapter, we had this much
6
of a
hours.
book.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I audiobooked it too, so I didn't actually read it this way.
Yeah.
I do.
It was right at the 6 hour mark. Like, it was just the perfect 1/3.
I mean, and narratively, it makes sense why it happened too, because it made Ralph's story going forward as kind of our actual main character that much more
Surprise.
kind of compelling to deal with his regret on the choices he made and how that influences how he progresses through the rest of the story.
I think it makes it easier for him to buy into some of the paranormal later because he has an emotional attachment to it, as opposed to if he was just, I'm just doing the facts, ma'am, right? I'm just following the facts.
Right. Because if it was just still in trial, yeah, he's less emotionally invested at that point, other than just the guilt of marching him off and having second thoughts about it because they have this conflicting information. But anyway,
True.
Benj,
Well,
go ahead.
that's the thing. Like, Ralph was already shown signs of doubt and like,
Mhm.
okay, I only can believe the evidence, because he's a very much show me person. This is the evidence I have. And even when you show him contradicting evidence, it's like, yes, but there's no other way to prove this evidence that we have that's lock solid. And I exactly understand your point. I just, think there could have been a way around it. Hence why we could get in, especially getting into the second third of the book, the introduction of
So
Holly.
right
But
on that real quick. I mean, the way he struggles through the first part of the book, he really is dealing with confirmation bias, right? Because the first piece of information that he has, he can't let that go as being the most likely truth, even though the other side of it is just as likely. I mean, it doesn't make sense as to how both sets of these, evidence cases are so ironclad. But he's so stuck on the first one that he got because it's how he got into the story.
yeah,
He really struggles, and I like seeing him struggle the way he did. It was good.
I do too. Melissa, any other thoughts on that opening third?
I like that it started off seeming like a normal story. Like with the Mr. Mercedes trilogy, we got Mr. Mercedes, which was just like a straight crime novel, right?
Like the
And then
first
we
third
had-
of this book, like the first third of that
Yes.
trilogy.
Yes.
Yes. And then we got like with Finders Keepers, you ended up having a little bit with like, is Brady Hartsfield doing anything? Like, but for the most part, it was just crazy people being crazy.
Kind of like the middle third of this book, the middle third of the trilogy.
Really?
Okay.
Are you? Am I coming up with a theory and I don't recognize it?
It's exactly that. I mean, it's
It
We'll-
is.
we'll-
But
let's-
then,
let's
right?
talk
Because
about-
the
yeah,
final
let's-
book in the trilogy, which the name End of Watch,
end of
like
watch.
that's all kinds of paranormal crazy.
Yeah.
As is the last third of this book.
Like the
Can
third
we
part of the
agree?
trilogy. It's
Like,
I just think
I-
it's thematically intended that way to some. That was something I kind of thought about, but it didn't-
Really?
yeah.
I can
Yes.
agree with that. I hadn't
Okay.
thought about it, but I can
Me
absolutely.
neither, apparently.
Yeah.
Look
I
at
mean-
me coming up with theories on the spot. Good job.
It's good stuff.
So speaking of the second half of it, it kind of we get into Ralph being on suspension, not suspension, on administrative leave because he was the one that ended up shooting Frankie's older brother Ollie, and so because of that you're automatically put on leave. You have to get a review, everything. After that, Ollie's dad attempting to commit suicide, isn't quite successful, and is now brain damaged, or as far as we know, is brain damaged. And so pretty much that family's wiped out, unfortunately. And with that, now we get the fallout of Marcy, Terry's wife, trying to cope with the death of her husband. Ralph trying to deal with his role in everything. Samuel's still being kind of a dick of, hey, we were in the right, and not being any like, geez. And I get it because he has to have that mindset, because if he admits fault, he's completely screwed. In life, he'll get lawsuits and everything. So you can't admit fault and everything like that. But then Howie has the idea to look further into some information about the stolen van, which happened to come from Ohio, right where Terry had vacationed back in April with his family, right when the van had been dropped there, And speaking of which, what was the Merle? Merle was the kid.
Merlin.
I love
yeah.
that, just a side chapter where like absolutely nothing, could have just been an offhand comment of, hey, we found this kid. But Stephen King gives this kid his own little, 3 sections. It's
Mhm.
like, okay, where the fuck is this going? But he ended up dropping the van in Ohio, and the same van ended up in Oklahoma 6 months later, or 2 months later. Yeah, right. That was when it
Sorry,
was.
my brain is like bouncing. So I should just mute
Yeah.
myself and make my facial expressions like I'm talking and singing.
So fast forward to Ohio then. Howie wants to look into some information there, and he has his assistant Alec, who I really like. Alec is probably one of my more favorite side characters we've gotten. But he calls up a company that he used to work with, or he had done some work with in Ohio, the Finder Keepers, and he gets to meet Holly Gibney. He gets the story of Bill and everything, and Holly is put on the hunt of the information. And I absolutely loved that chapter of Lee, and that is my note here. Her progression into PI it's impressive how far she's come just in that section. The rest of the book kind of doesn't revert back to old Hollyisms, but it's the Holly we know. But this one, it's her following a lead, her following up, her doing this, and like doing the footwork, doing the legwork, and she was able to figure out that, oh yeah, there's no chance Terry could have gotten this car, even though he was here at the same exact time. There's no chance he had this vehicle at any point or anything like that. Better than anybody could have, faster than anybody could have. And with that, Holly gets the information and heads down to Oklahoma to assist in the investigation. And I'd say that's about the
I would make that cut as
second,
the
third.
second, third right
Yeah.
there myself. Yeah.
Mhm.
I love, well, I mean, yeah, who doesn't love Holly at this point? I mean, she's so fun to just follow her thought process on how she gets to things, and seeing her strengths become stronger, and because of her own confidence in her own abilities. And she always harkens back to, oh, Bill like taught me this, he gets all the credit. But I mean, she's the one doing it, and she has her own Hollyisms. She has her own Holly hope that we'll get to, that just gives her a unique perspective. And now she has some tools to help her with her own emotional, mental struggles that she grew up with, that make her, her confidence is way up, even though in her head it isn't. It is coming across to others as if she knows what she's doing and she's making it happen. And I just love the way when she's going through Ohio, She just logically plots out what she's going to do, takes that information, does some Bill-isms of becoming buddy-buddy with someone on the sly and saying, I'll pay you $250 to go and talk to me and I won't tell your supervisor. That felt very much like Bill and the nurses at Hartsfield Hospital, just to get information. It's great to see her kind of embody some of the best parts of Bill, but not lose her holliness, if you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah, and she even like says in her monologue or interlogue that if Bill was here, he would have been able to buddy up with the nurse. I'm gonna have to find a new way to get this information, and she does. She ends up tracking a nurse home, like literally just following the gas station or whatever, and ends up getting the information she needed that way. So, yeah, exactly. She knows she's not Bill, but she's picked up enough from him that she's good. She's very good at what she does. So, anything else with that section?
There were.
I just appreciate that Holly is a unique character. I think oftentimes we end up in Stephen King novels going, oh, look, it's the writer author main character, or oh, look, here's the, older, shucks best friend who drives the truck, right? Like, she's unique.
Mm-hmm. She is certainly a standout type character. I mean, you could maybe make some jumps that have other characters that have similarities, but you couldn't point to being like, this is this trope of type of character, really, because she's so dynamic. I will say there are a couple things in this section that lead into the third section, which are the showings up of certain images to certain people, whether it be a muscly person with finger tattoos that shows up to Jack, I believe. Yeah, Jack Hoskins, and starts kind of getting in his head. Jack Hoskins is another one of the detectives who's kind of taking over some of the stuff while Ralph has been put on administrative leave. He finds some information in a barn and gets touched on the back of his neck by something. They find some really weird black goo along with some other semen type looking stuff. But there's like an enormous amount of it, like an inhumanly amount.
Not even John Holmes.
Right.
Such a random detail. And okay, that's all. That's all I'm saying about that. That's a random detail.
So he gets touched and starts having kind of hallucinatory psychosis type things, if you will. There are, let's see, it was it, whose daughter was it? It was Ralph's
Terry's daughter.
Terry's daughter.
Terry and Marcy's, yeah. The youngest.
Yes, just starts having dreams about someone who looks kind of like her father, but more like a face made of Play-Doh. And then it comes back again, and it has straws for eyes. And it's trying to tell her that, yeah, I'm glad you're sad. I'm glad you're scared. It makes me so happy that you're feeling so terrified. And he also, this voice, this thing in her dream, tries to get the daughter to go and tell Ralph to stop investigating further.
Yeah,
into what's really going on.
And she does.
And she does pass that message.
He just doesn't listen.
Mm-hmm.
And we also get some details from like one of the eyewitnesses, the main eyewitness that we later spend a lot of time with, that I can't remember his name. Claude. That when he had seen Terry the night of the murder, when he shook his hand, he got his cut on his hand from a pinky nail, from an extended pinky nail.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not gonna lie, right there, and I'm like, okay, there's the key. I mean, that was the giveaway, which
and then later one of the daughters was like, yeah, Dad ran into the orderly and like he got a scratch on his arm, remember?
Back in Dayton, Ohio, when Terry was visiting his own father, who has pretty advanced dementia, Alzheimer's. Yeah.
And so
that was pretty obvious too.
He said he's got kind of that coke nail, and coming from a druggie, former or recovering addict, it's like, okay, you know what a cokenail is. Like, okay, I know exactly what, but there's the story. He got the blood and whatever. Now, what is this creature?
Exactly. Yep.
What is this? We know the story. As soon as I heard that, I'm like, okay, it's not Terry. It is something else. That
Absolutely.
was my giveaway.
Yeah. There were a couple
for
things
it.
that led up to it that was just easily the confirming thing. Like it was just, okay, now I can kind of tell where we're headed. Like for real.
Yeah. So I wanted to get those in because that was all information we got in the second half as well.
Yeah. I can't think if there's
second,
any
third.
other important. I mean, I'm sure there's things, but I'd say those are the most important things that
Yeah.
happened in that middle section that were
Trying to see, Jeannie
that
wakes up.
influence what happens coming up.
So can we talk about Jeannie really quick? Ralph's wife. And well, she's also visited.
She sees something in her living
also-
room in
Mhm.
the middle of the night. There's this man
Yeah.
who she is just out of the light, who clearly is pretty muscly, like he spends a lot of time in the gym. And
As we all do.
well, yeah, and she can't make out too much, but she does see tattoos on his fingers. Is that right? Does she get that as well?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Because that's
Yeah,
how Jack Hoskins remembers the only thing he knows about what this visions that start happening in his head after he gets touched is he's in the bathroom at one point and the hand comes around the shower curtain and he just has the 4 letters of what was it, can't tattoo on it on the hand.
Must.
Well,
Can't and must.
I think he only sees can't, or does he see both?
Right.
I don't know, but either
Oh,
way.
Well, I
yeah,
think
I gotcha, I gotcha.
at first we get somebody who only sees can't, and then we get somebody who only sees must,
think
and then
she
we get the
sees must.
confirmation that it's both.
I think she
Yeah.
sees must, he sees can't.
Yeah.
She being
Yeah.
Jeannie. So go ahead,
Right.
Benj.
Yeah, so I just thought of her because I do have the Wikipedia page up to help spark my memory of stuff, and I saw her name pop up, and I remember I'm like, I don't like her. As a character, she's fine. As a person, she's fine. As a wife, she's fine. But as a wife, shut up. You're not the police officer. Stop. Just I know you relate. I understand you confide in your spouses, and sometimes they have information, but she's the one that told him go get him. Don't let him. You go get him at that ball game. She Catelyn Starked him of just not like it. She bothered me. Like I get it. She was helpful at times, but at most of the time she was just interjecting. If she just listened, that's fine. But she didn't listen. She tried to give advice. And again, some of her advice was good. Some of it was not. And it just, I don't know why it rubbed me the wrong way, but I'm just like, I would say the same thing if it was a husband in the same boat, in the same, like flip flop. It's not because it was a wife. No, I know that's what you're thinking, Melissa. It's not because it's a wife. It's because it's a spouse that you are not in this profession. Stop it. It's just, I don't
were
know.
you feeling
It's
that way
unrealistically.
before her vision dream thing?
Yes.
Because she did have a lot of thoughts on the case well
Yes,
before
that's what I'm talking
she
about.
was involved in.
That's what I'm
that
talking
side of
about
it.
is when he was investigating the case before even the arrest, like they mentioned back, she's like, oh, I'm the one that told you, you can't let this wait. You can't, give him the chance. She said that. And it's like, what? I mean, yes. I mean, I get the whole mindset of that, but it's like, if he made that choice, fine. I can blame Ralph. And I do blame Ralph for following through on it. But it's like, you have no perception of it personally. I don't know. I know I'm being an asshole, but it's something that just rubbed me the wrong way. When every time like they'd be talking and like he's just talking, and then she's like, "Well, what about this? What about?" It's like, stop. Apart from like a few things, like Cantaloupe thing, fine, that was good. The confluences, great, good observation. But other stuff where it was actually procedural that she was trying to help with, that bothered me. Stay out of it. Sorry, I don't know. Every time I like both times through, but in that first,
I'm gonna rebut for a second.
yes, please.
I am not discounting your feelings. I am sure you're probably annoyed by her. And yes, she probably stuck her nose in where maybe it may or may not have been. But if that is the dynamic of their marriage, and that has been something that they do regularly, then she has been a 15 to 20-year wife of a police officer who has constantly brought things home, and it seems like he values her opinion as a different perspective. So you can't blame her in a dynamic that they have agreed upon together. And that's how I see it. I am not disagreeing with the annoyance about it, because sometimes her advice isn't good, as everybody doesn't always give good advice, unless you're me and Luke. However, just say
On certain things. Certain things.
a majority of the time. However, I think that if that's the dynamic of their marriage, it's not like she's putting her 2 cents in and he's saying, woman, back off. He's like, hey, let me run this by you. Like, that's their dynamic. And as the book goes on, if it weren't for her, Ralph would have done half that shit in that last third of that book. He wouldn't have gone.
Yeah, I'll just say this. I just took it as he brought it home and she was a sounding board for him, and she provided feedback. And yeah, I mean, I could see it too if this was rookie detective and he's just talking aloud to himself and she jumps in. Like, I don't know, maybe that's a little different, but yeah, I mean, they obviously are big fans of each other, and like he
Which is
absolutely
nice.
respected her a
It was,
lot.
yes.
Which is where, like, I didn't take it that he felt like she was butting in, even if it was something he disagreed with. That's why I guess it didn't bother me. If he would have been
No.
like, this is not, like, if he would have been clearly upset that she was doing this, I think it changes that a little bit to me.
And excellent points. And you're both absolutely right. I know I'm in the wrong with my, mindset of it.
It's okay to
And
be annoyed by a character, too.
Right.
and
Especially
my
because
noise
if
re-
it's not something you would do,
Yes, and like that's like, and it's the Ralph character more so, I guess, in that, because like you said, it's not her fault for having her opinion. She's allowed to, and to me, it's my annoyance of he's telling her every fucking thing, and sometimes, I mean, and yeah, you're right, that's their relationship, and that's great. Just me personally, it's like you don't want to put that whole baggage on the other person, and it's like so. I guess that's just where my brain went to when I heard it, but you're absolutely right. And it was like a drill down heavy thing. It was just every time, like, there would be like once or twice, it's like, oh yeah, that annoyed me the first time through too. It just reminded me that I saw her name put on the screen. I was like, oh yeah, Jeannie. I knew there was something about Jeannie I wanted to say. But so rant over, you guys are absolutely correct.
look, Benji ranted, drink. Look, I have
All right. All right. So we have Holly flies to Flint City. So we're at that point. Holly gets down to Flint City. And that's where the genie interaction or the genie creature interaction happens. We start getting a breakdown, and she just happens to watch a Mexican luchador film on the flight down that could perfectly explain.
She picked that. She brought it with her. That was in
because
her,
they're-
had
like,
they're
seen it
in my-
room of
She saw it in
thousands.
high school. She talks
Gotcha,
about how she
gotcha,
saw it
gotcha.
in high school and it scared the crap out of her.
Gotcha. So we learn of El Cuco, which I did not look up El Cuco, if that's an actual thing. I will do that now because I can
I'll
literally
go.
just
I'll do it. Go
You
ahead.
talk.
I mean,
Luke,
I
search.
literally have to. Yeah, so El Cuco steals the blood of its victims or of the ones they want to imitate and feeds off the blood and flesh of preferably children. It will do because they're sweeter. I mean, it's all that sugar from Halloween.
Fresh.
Yeah, fresh. Yeah. It sounds familiar a bit for other things we've seen.
I have a whole thing. Don't
I
even
know,
go
I
there
know.
yet.
I'm not. Oh, trust me, I'm not. So she basically breaks down her theory. Luke, I think you actually have a point here.
So yeah, I mean, I guess for
Oh,
go ahead. I mean, that's kind of
well,
a more
I think that's late. I think it's later. So she she sits down with everybody, hears everybody out, and shows her argument and breaks down what she finds. She gets a couple of them, like, not convinced, but okay,
Open to the
maybe
idea.
open to the idea. However, Ralph was, but it was still very okay. If this outsider exists,
Very
you know
conditional.
what can, yeah, conditional, and they figure out that another person had been scratched by them. Again, going back to Claude. After some time, they head down to Lubbock, Texas. Correct?
No, it was
No,
oh man, not Lubbock. It's oh man, this is an easy one.
Marysville. Marysville.
Yeah, but where did they go before that? Well, no, hold on. Yeah, you're right. They talk about something. Good, continue.
No, that's right. I'm literally cheating off the Wikipedia.
I know.
That's all.
I know. You're good.
So yeah, they basically her not Jack, her, Ralph, Howie,
Alec.
Alec, and there's one other, Ewans, right? Wasn't
Yeah, Sablo.
Sablo? Yeah, Sablo. I think it was Ewan Sablo.
Uni Sablo.
Uni Sablo, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And guy named Pelly. Oh, that's Alec. Alec Pelly. Okay.
Yep.
Sorry. They all go down to Marysville to talk to Bolton, where we meet Bolton's mother. Who's
Lovey.
one heck of a Molly, who's one heck of a
Lovey.
character.
Lovey.
Oh,
Lovey.
Lovey.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Sorry. Yeah. Lovey's awesome. She's very much a Southern Texas mother of a kid who went through their shit. You know, is the best way to put it. She's realistic, pulls no punches, but just very sweet and caring and everything. But before heading to Texas, Holly, reiterates to Ralph that he has to keep an open mind. And then, was it the day before the attack? Or no, it was then that she said, you have to believe. If anything, for tomorrow, you have to believe in this, in the outsider. Because if you don't, nobody else is going to. And it's going to be all for nothing. And she's obviously right. So I've been kind of rambling here. Anybody else want to kind of jump in for the last bit of the book?
I really like that so when they got to Lovey and I forget her son's name already.
Claude.
Claude, they send him away. They're like, hey, go get chicken. He's like, but that's like an hour drive both ways.
And
And
they're
they're like,
We know.
yep, that's, you know what, but I'm really hungry. He's like, and his mother's like, would you just go get some chicken? And so he goes, and they're like, yeah, he can't know any of this because if he knows, then the weirdo thing that might look like him might also know. So he can't know that we know about him. So
Which
Claude
was a
can't know.
cool twist that
I
or a
liked
cool, I've never really thought of that one before, because it does kind of lead to maybe one of my questions, but I'll just go ahead with it. Because I was curious of, once Terry got the scratch, how he, did he pick Terry on purpose, or was it he just had the opportunity, took the opportunity, and then planned afterwards, kind of thing? That was kind of a thought process I had, and I'll scratch that question, but I'll throw it out to you guys now of, what's your thoughts on El Cuco? Does he, pre-plan, or is it just crime and passion? And then because of the opportunity to know the knowledge, you can track that way.
I think for the examples we have, it felt more opportunistic to me. Like he just happened across a couple guys, and then the information in their heads that he had access to maybe developed where he went to either, well, some of it. So Holly's theory is that this is El Cuco, also basically kind of a boogeyman combination with vampires and skin changing, and it takes the form of somebody else, does its thing, and then has to find a new host, if you will, to take over. And there's a long transition period between until it does it again. It feeds, and then it has a long transition period to take a new body. So her theory is that because Ralph has been tracking so closely that it's trying to do too much, it's staying too active in its dormancy period, and that's one of the benefits of them continuing to move forward, regardless of what Terry's daughter was told. Like, it's kind of like if it's really getting in the daughter's head, it's showing its cards that it's afraid of them by saying stop. But as far as the planning out and choosing a victim to become the host, it feels opportunistic to me so far on the ones that we've seen. Maybe there are other ones at other times, because these stories go back hundreds of years, which is what we find out through the northern Mexican folklore, right? And along with that, Lovey was actually from Mexico and knew Yune Sablo's dad or grandpa. They just said Poppy. So, and the town that was mentioned was they went up through Laredo, Texas, and that was the one that was in my head, not Lubbock, but yes, they are in Marysville, which is north of Dallas. And but she came up through Laredo because it was like the Nashville of the South, and she was a music player. So that was the Texas city that I was trying to come up with when you said Lubbock. So anyway,
Gotcha. Yeah, I just, for some reason, Lubbock stood out to me, but I couldn't remember why. But yeah, so with that, we get the whole breakdown to Lovey. We get everybody kind of on board, and we figure out there's a hellmouth. Let's just call it what it is.
Yeah.
The pit, or what was it called? I'm trying to remember.
the hole.
The hole, yeah. So it's just
Maryville
the hole. Yeah. I wonder if that's actually a thing. If Maryville's an actual town, I would bet that's an actual
It is
thing.
an actual town.
So it's one of those, like, I would be curious. But so, and it makes sense. It's an abandoned tourist attraction kind of thing. Deep down, nobody's going to come and find him. So El Cuco decides to go and chill out there.
But part of it is too that, God, I forgot his name again. The guy he's transforming
Claude.
into.
Yes.
Claude, he has dead relatives down there. Like, that's
Yes.
something else that we haven't talked about so much, is like the need for, during the transformation, to be near the deceased family members of the person they're turning into. So when he was turning into Terry, he was actually at like nearby a graveyard where Terry's family had been
Yeah.
living for years. And that was what happened at that barn that they found. That's because that was his hovel before. And now he is in this hole that Terry had his uncle and many of his cousins all died in several years before trying to rescue
Claude.
these kids.
Yes.
So there is a lot of familial ka is the word they use, right? It's not quite
Yes.
souls, but it's not just about the bones. It's this presence of family that,
That Holly says maybe there's like a DNA connection, right?
yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, you can track the lineage or however,
That's so
future
weird.
wise it is. And I do love the fact that, once going back to section 1, really, but in the barn itself, they're like, there's so much semen. There's so much. And I'm like, no, that's not semen. That's just goo. That is,
I watched
shedded
Ghostbusters.
it's a shedded skin. It's,
Mhm.
and that's pretty much it. And I won't lie, during the arraignment thing, because I wasn't fully on the paranormal train just yet. Like, I was like, I'm about 90% there, and I overlooked the burn guy, like when it was first mentioned and everything. And when Ralph's going back in his dreams, the thing of the yellow bra strip. And there's a guy at the arraignment who looks severely burned wearing a yellow bandana. Well, it happens to be the exact same shade, shape, and color of the shirt Terry was wearing after he left the strip club. So that's really where Ralph's story, like his belief, starts to manifest, because he knew something was off with that. But yeah, the melting of the skin and then the regrowth, because the first things to come is the tattoos, which are deeper than skin. Like, most tattoos go below skin level. And so
I didn't think
if
about
you're
that. That's interesting.
if you're going into change into somebody, you're gonna get what's under their skin first to come up. And so that's why the faint tattoos
Hmm.
start showing up
That's
first.
interesting. Yeah.
Completely just made that up off my
Yeah,
ass
no, I
right now.
definitely hadn't
but-
thought about that either.
It's like I just thought about it. I'm like, yeah, no, that actually makes sense to me. So that's why I went with it. But so we fast forward to the hole. Jack is there. The funny thing about Jack is he's the typical Stephen King bully. He's, I don't know if I thought that note sounded familiar, but he's the typical
Yep.
bully that you see in the book. And he gets possessed or overtaken, and he's just the asshole. And the only reason he's an asshole is he was on fucking vacation.
That's not true. He's been an asshole and a very bad detective. They've talked because he's one of the detectives with Ralph,
I know. Well, like in
and
his
they've talked
head,
about how useless he's been up until this
Yes.
point.
but in his head, the
Right.
only negative thing he could say is Ralph said no opinion. That was it. It wasn't Ralph shit talked him or anything. Oh, no opinion, huh? No opinion, motherfucker. And that was it. That's how much of an asshole he is that one thing where he had no opinion on it.
Because
And
he was on
that was
administrative
his
leave,
driving-
and he like fundamentally shouldn't have, right?
No.
This
So
is before.
was
This is
several
when-
years. This was a few years
Yes.
before, where their
He
captain
was going
was
for a
like,
raise or something, or maybe a
Okay.
promotion. Like he was going like for a sergeant's promotion or something. And they asked all your colleagues, how do you rank him? And the pregnant partner gave him a decent review. It was like, okay, yeah, he's fine enough, adequate. He's adequate. He's fine. And Ralph was like, no opinion in his. And that was all of Jack's driving force of his. Once El Cuco got into him, he's like, no opinion, motherfucker, no opinion. But, bullshit. Just mumbling to himself the whole time. And it's like, okay, that's your true, just bully, not bad guy, just bully kind of thing that you get from Stephen King. But he's on the mountaintop. He's waiting for the crew to show up. Again, another Stephen King book where a crew of people show up to go after a monster.
"I have a
or-
list. Don't worry.
I know. Oh, I know.
No, move on."
I am. Jack takes out two of them, I think.
Yes, he kills.
Yeah,
Takes out two,
Kelly,
Kelly.
wounds a third.
Alec, and Howie.
Alec and Holly are dead.
Howie.
Sorry, and Howie are dead. Ewan is wounded and left behind. So Holly and Ralph make their way into the cave, and we meet El Cuco, who's, I don't know, how would you describe the character in the cave?
Oh, it's our turn. Okay.
Bueller?
So I feel like I need to pause you here.
Please.
Thank you. Okay. Because I can't answer that question until I get to the only note that I took. I only took one.
Which technically I wrote almost the same thing. I just hid it so you couldn't see it. We talked about this, didn't we?
But I wrote it first, didn't I? Or had you
No,
already
I
written
had
it?
it. I had it in there. Like that was the first thing I wrote in my
Okay.
last box.
All right.
That's all right.
So, I'm looking at my shelf of books, right? And as I'm thinking about this book and reading it, the farther I get into it, I was like, man, the first one was Self. I had a lot of connections to. There's this crazy thing going on. So we've got this ragtag bunch of people all thrown together, going and traveling to try and figure this out, right? So that was my first connection. Only the difference was Holly was kind of like the little kid instead of actually having a kid. So I was very excited there wasn't actually a kid this time. And I said, hold on, wait, that also sounds like Dr. Sleep. To the point that even Dan's best friend in the truck, the one who always pretended to be the girl's uncle, Albra's uncle, it wasn't really Dan, but you know who I'm talking about. Dan's buddy, the one who
Uncle
drove him
Bill,
all the way.
I believe.
There you go, Uncle Bill. Uncle Bill reminded me of Alec, like completely same character in my head.
Yeah.
They were very, very similar. Okay, so there was that. Then I was like, oh, okay. So then Luke and I were talking a little more, and he was like, hey, you know what else had a group of people fighting bad guys? Salem's Lot, right?
Which I did reread, and I
Yeah.
still don't care for
Did
it.
Okay, fair. I'll give you that. I also said the big baddie in this, right? Our big bad guy reminds me a lot of the vampires in Salem's Lot.
Absolutely.
Reminds me of the bad guy whose name starts with L, and I forget his name.
Oh, shit. I Have
Gaunt,
things here.
Mr. Leland Gaunt.
Leland Gaunt. Yeah.
Reminds me of Leland Gaunt. Of course, like
the most obvious.
the most obvious, there's so many connections to it here, right?
So
Yes.
many.
So many connections to it. So I'm
The fear makes them taste better.
before I go so much into it, do you want to do some others, Luke? And I can pull
Yeah,
out
so
examples.
not even just the group thing from Dr. Sleep, but also the old people running around their RVs are specifically going after the same type of life sustenance from kids, and fear makes it taste better, like Benji said. I mean, that idea is in both. It's the exact same thing coming up again.
Mhm.
I had definitely some ideas that I even wrote this down. Could Salem's Lot have a different context, since I now have more King knowledge, and I read almost the entire thing the past couple days to see how the Wendigo was really portrayed. I was gonna try
Oh,
to
the
read.
Wendigo was in here. Pet
Pet-
Cemetery.
Pet Cemetery.
What did I say?
You
Salem's
said
Lot.
Salem's Lot.
I meant Pet Cemetery. I apologize. Because also Tom Gordon as well. The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon. It shows up there as well.
Yes.
And I didn't really see any direct similarities to it. It just was another king monster. But yeah, there are some pretty obvious ones. Dr. Sleep were the most obvious monster connections, like direct monster connections that I had on that. And yeah, and Melissa,
Are we
and I-
missing any before I get into my it conversation?
go ahead
Ah.
with your it conversation.
I just don't know if he wants me to add any to this pile.
I'm trying to think what other books we read.
A lot. Okay, so I'm going to sit here and hold my pile while I talk about it. If you think of another one, let me know because I can add it. Not only is Pennywise basically like a distant relative of our outsider, he just is. They are too similar to not be cut from the same cloth. They're not the same creature, but they are definitely like blood relatives of some sort. That's my opinion.
Oh, you know what this reminded me of? End of Watch, because Holly was there.
Oh yeah, well, I mean,
Yeah, and don't forget about Mr. Mercedes
Needful
and
Mr.
Finders
Mercedes
Keepers.
and
I can't even get them on the all screen. Okay. But there were two other components of it that I felt really, really stood out to me. The first one was going down in the hole and them going down in the sewers underneath. I mean, that hit me
Oh,
like
yeah.
a ton of bricks. It was like, ooh,
Yes.
here we go. The other one was Jack
Hmm.
because it was Henry Bowers.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
all about, you know what? With Pennywise and Henry Bowers, it was all about they have to believe in me in order for even a little bit for me to hurt them, but you can hurt them even if they don't believe in me. That's how I felt Jack was. Jack was like the outsider's backup. It was, if I can't get to them, you can.
Mhm.
We don't
Yeah.
often see, well,
We were talking
Salem's
about
Lot had
this.
that too.
There were a
Salem's
handful
Lot,
where it just felt like there's always an accomplice that's forced into. I
Yeah.
felt that was
Needful Things, literally every other character was that character.
Right.
Either there was no accomplice or it was an entire book of accomplices.
Yeah. Trying to think. Gerald's Game, now Finders Keepers, now Tim McGee.
There
now.
were some things, I think, Melissa, when you and I were talking, I thought we came up with some further ones that were like, you mentioned Gerald's Game. I thought, not Gerald's Game, Lisi's story.
I did.
And I don't remember exactly why. And I think there was maybe even something in like Revival that could have been some kind of connection, but I don't remember what it would have been.
Yeah. Oh,
Don't
well, look,
remember
I know
Revival.
the biggest connection we're missing, 11/22/63, it was in Texas.
Ooh, there you go.
I don't think my stats like
I just did that just to get that side, just to get
I mean I can add Revival too, because in Revival, like the bad guy is all about mental manipulation. And because this book to me connected to End of Watch because of that something happened piece of like I don't really know what's going on.
Mhm.
yeah.
I don't want to add any more. I feel very
So,
dangerous.
I mean, that's more than half of the books that we've read.
Yeah. And so
Because
that goes
it
into my
really-
note. I want to get mine out of the way because mine's when I first read it, it was I talked to Luke a little bit we're at a family party, and Luke said, "Did you finish it?" I'm like, "No, I didn't. I got to this point here." And blah blah blah. He's like, "Well, you can't talk to, I'm gonna go talk to Melissa. She finished it." And I heard from the other room, or from the other side of the room, something about what I want to say Salem's Lot. Yeah, I heard you say something about Salem's Lot. And I'm like, okay, so they're talking about connections and everything. And I'm like, okay, I'll get to there, because I was only about a third. I wasn't even at because I only started that day, and I was only like 3 hours in. I was hooked, but I hadn't gotten to move to the main point. And then I read on, and I'm like, okay, yeah, this is Stephen King Paint by Numbers. We've read this a half dozen to a dozen times already. Of thing happens, get the crew together, go kill monster. And it's, you can filter in, and it's not me shitting on the book at all. I did enjoy this book, but the second half definitely took me out of it, because I was so in love with the first part, with that first, just the first, I'll take, the first 2/3 of the book, just the final third, where it was just like, okay, now we're on the monster hunt. And it's like, meh, we've seen this. Okay, how are we going to do it? And I do like the ending. I do like how we got rid of the monster. Didn't have to bully him to death. Didn't have to, all that. Didn't have to take him through the heart in, a bitch ass way while he's sleeping. That was kind of bullshit.
Legitimately just happy slapped him.
Just happy slapped him. A callback to the very first Mr. Mercedes, and actually Finders Keepers. Finders Keepers, because he whacks the guy with the happy slapper. A couple times he uses that one, but it's so I'm okay with the very ending of the book. It's just that I don't know, that 65 to 95% through just is like, okay, we've been here, we've done this. All right, it didn't impress me that much on it. As Shania Twain says, it don't impress me much. But
Can we talk about how they get rid of the guy? Because I had another book connection by a non-Stephen King author.
Okay. Sure.
Because what happened? He busted, he happy slapped it into a million little slugs. And so
Yes.
as Kevin says to his mom on the field outside of his tent
You bust
in
slug.
Harry Potter
You
and the
bust
Goblet of
slug.
Fire, you bust slug.
God damn it. Just, how much I love that you referenced that, because quite literally twice a week I quote that in my head, just
bust
like
slug.
doing my job. You bust slug. You bust slug. Because
Kevin.
Oh,
I just
Kevin.
had the page number 2. Hold on. I just find it for you so you can then cite your source.
that's
So-
great. I saw you pull the book up, and I was like, where are you going with
She's
this
going
one?
somewhere with this. Don't you?
That's fucking great.
Page 81.
Page 81. All right. Yes.
Chapter
Crouch
before
and
the-
Bagman.
Yep, Bagman and Crouch, absolutely.
Yep.
So to add to this combination and combine it back to something Melissa kind of already said. So obviously we happy slap the monster and it turns into a bunch of insects, which is very similar to Pennywise when it turns into a bunch of spiders and they think they kill a lot of them, but they're not sure. And that was when they're little kids, right? Or was that the
Yes. No. That was
that's the
that was
final
adult.
that's
That
the
was
final
that
showdown?
was
Because
but
Ben was
Ben.
killing all of the spider things with his cowboy
the
boots.
eggs. Yeah,
Right,
he
right.
cracked the eggs and kill them.
That was when I was gonna go back and look at those scenes again too, but I didn't have time. But
Yeah.
I knew you guys would correct me on that. But either way, yeah, Melissa, you brought up that there's clearly some kind of relationship or connection between Pennywise and we'll just say El Cuco or whatever we want to call it. And I think I said to Melissa, this really could be a descendant from Pennywise. Because we know Pennywise came to Earth so long ago. I mean, this could have done the same thing and just landed in Mexico instead. I mean, it really could have. They could be the same level, or it could be an offspring type thing. But there is certainly some kind of lineage between these two.
I would put it probably at, and like personal opinion, I would put it as a offspring, because he's not as powerful.
That's exactly why I feel the same way. I absolutely.
You know,
Yes, and look at me using good improv skills. Yes,
Yes,
and time-wise, we don't know how long this thing's been around. We
Mhm.
only know of it officially since like
a couple hundred
um,
years ago.
Ohio in April.
Well, but all the Mexican legends have been around for so
But
long.
this one in
See,
particular,
I was
Yeah.
under the impression that this is the only one of this.
see,
oh,
and
That's
and
where
I kind of
was.
agree with Melissa.
but I don't
this-
know if that would work as a Pennywise child then if the eggs got out in 1985.
No, I'm not saying that. At some other point, not necessarily one of the spiders that got out, but
Oh.
at some other point, I mean, hundreds of years ago,
Okay.
maybe there was a similar thing because we're not convinced that Ben kills all of those spiders. Like this, there could have been some defeat of a Pennywise hundreds of years ago to some extent.
Okay.
I mean, thousands of years ago, tens of thousands of years ago, and could have branched off at that point and then just still continued and grew in power. That's, to me, that's where it's either a direct offspring, not necessarily one of the spiders, because that timeline does not work. It would have to be way previously, but it is also weaker than what I think Pennywise is. But that could also
And I wouldn't believe in offspring, to be honest. I don't think, because they show Pennywise coming to the actual river in Maine, right? Like,
right, yeah, millions of years ago.
yeah, I don't know.
That's what I'm saying.
See,
It could be
personally, I think it's
similar.
closer related to Wendigo than Pennywise. The Wendigo from Pet Cemetery and everything,
Mhm.
being feeding on, you know, the need and the want and everything like that, using the fear, using the, you know, everything like that, you walking in the shadows kind of thing.
I
Because
did not get that from the Wendigo at all. I think, like, I just took
Well,
that as
the
like a really
Wendigo
scary spirit.
is the one that sends the vision of Pascal to the main
Yeah.
guy, and I mean, all of them can do that. All three of
Yeah.
them have the same
That's true.
thing of some kind
Yeah,
of astral
true.
projection of themselves or an idea into others. I think they're all
Okay.
certainly
so,
connected.
yeah, I agree. I do think they're all connected some way or another.
They're on the same
So, all
branch
right.
of our, if we connect it to insomnia, our overall
Right.
government of monsters, if you will.
Right. I mentioned Cobb. We haven't even gotten to the Dark Tower yet, boys.
Nope.
Yeah, that's right.
Soon-ish, we will be there. So, with that said, I think we've pretty much covered everything. Again, Holly saves the day, kills the bad guy, you know, or takes him out, you know. So Holly is the main character in the Mr. Mysteries. Sorry, I was like Fred chat. But you know, Holly is the main character of it. She takes him out, and Terry's name is cleared by a very convoluted story that they've worked up. We will get there, so let's just move on from that for now. Anybody have anything else on the last portion of the book?
I like
like-
that Ralph and Holly have this kind of ongoing relationship to help them deal with the paranormal thing that they have been thrust into. Sorry if I
I forgot
stole your
about that.
thunder there,
Yeah, so yeah.
Melissa.
Same.
I honestly forgot about that because again, I've only read it 1.5 times, and
Yeah, I mean that's
Yeah,
like
like
the
that second
real
half.
outro area. Like
Yeah.
it's the after everything happens, after everyone gets their story straight. This is just like the fallout of them personally.
I like that Holly made a new friend.
yes,
Like from
Definitely.
for
Yes.
real friend. I
exactly.
mean, it took us a while to get there, but like she replaced Bill. I want to see a Ralph and Holly like private
With Jerome.
detectives.
With
something.
Jerome popping in from Ireland, you know, coming back from Ireland, you know, because I was gonna say, Melissa, we answered your question from last episode. Where is Holly and Jerome going to be? And I knew Holly was gonna be here. Jerome was in Ireland.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
Really simple. You know, I just thought it was funny.
Now, technically, she made another friend in this book too. Her and Lovey got along really
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
and a couple other
Mhm.
people they got along well. I mean, Ralph's
Yes.
wife,
Jeannie.
Frieder, yeah,
Yeah,
They-
Jeannie was.
it
into
went
her.
well. It was a good Holly book. For
And yeah,
Frieder.
nobody like, and that's one thing I'll give credit to. Nobody really once she kind of proved herself. You could tell when on the first interactions with Holly, there was a lot of standoffishness because of her personality and her style, with all of her issues and everything. But as soon as she proved herself, everybody was fully accepting. I wish everybody was fully accepting from the get-go, but I get it. You meet somebody that's eccentric, for lack of a better term, you're gonna be like, okay. And then they start talking, they're like, oh shit, okay, you know what you're talking about. And you
The
completely
first time she
revert.
talks to a lot of them, it's, and by the way, I'm going to teach you about supernatural things by showing you this Mexican movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
like, but she was recognizing that too.
But she was also recognized for her own superlatives. I mean, they
yeah.
all knew her, like they all had
Oh,
looked
yeah.
her up, and like she had a lot of
They're like, oh shit, that's you?
professional
Like, you're
credential
cool.
kind
Mhm.
of thing going on. So
Yeah.
I thought it was good that she got that to give her a boost of confidence that people weren't going to just shit all over her ideas because she had proven herself publicly in the news, which you hate to have that be the only reason, but it definitely went a long way to garnering some platform to work from.
Exactly. So, all right. So, since our typical host was a little too lazy to write questions,
Ooh.
I'm kidding. I'm so kidding, Melissa. I'm kidding. I was asked to write questions because she was very busy doing proper mom and teacher and student things. And so I came up with some. I did come up with some. They're not as good as hers, but they're good. So we
Oh,
already
that was
covered.
almost nice.
No, I said it was a compliment. I mean, mine are
I
good
know, that was like nice. I'm shocked. I'm appreciating the compliment. Go on.
So we already kind of covered my first one. Does El Cuco, pre-plan his victims, or is it all just spontaneous for the moment? Kind of, and then goes from there to learn about him. I think we already covered that. So my next question: seeing the damage that El Cuco or the outsider can inflict, where on your personal terror list does El Cuco rate as a monster?
Who else is on the list? Or are we
Well, you got
skipping with Salem
Pennywise,
books?
you got
Okay.
Salem's. We'll go Stephen King monsters, the ones we've
Okay.
kind of discussed here. And maybe throw in the classics: Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, and Freddy Krueger.
I
And-
haven't seen any of those movies, but sure.
See, Luke, you're hesitating because I'm usually the first one to answer. So
Eh,
I'm researching.
mean-
Hold on.
I just feel like they're all in the same boat for a lot of these. I mean,
okay,
I don't know. I think Pennywise is the most terrifying because it can do like anything. He seems more versatile.
Okay.
It seems more versatile.
Yeah.
This seems more boots on the ground, which can be frightening that any passerby can basically steal your likeness and frame you for a heinous crime that SVU and Ice-T will have to come and solve. But yeah, I mean,
And
it's definitely in the realm of the rest of them. Salem's Lot, dumb. I just don't care for that version of vampires. It's just not scary. It's just unrealistic
Yeah.
to me compared to the other ones.
Carrie's scarier than Salem's Lot. Yeah, and I would call
To
Carrie
some
a.
extent, the telekinesis stuff, the fire starter.
You pissed the
stuff,
wrong person off, or you're just at a prom, and some chick who you never
Yeah,
talked to or was mean to, just
Yeah,
Right.
I don't know. It's in the middle. I'd put
Fair.
this somewhere in the middle, maybe a little bit higher than the middle to some extent on that list.
Fair. Melissa.
Not as high as Pennywise, because I feel like while this outsider, I'm just gonna call it that, has a definite destructive path. Its range is small.
Fair.
Pennywise's range is larger.
Yeah, it's very localized.
I will tell you, there are 2 Stephen King books that scared me much, much worse than even it did. We have read neither of them yet.
Mhm.
And I will tell you, and I was not scared at all by The Outsider. Could be that I'm desensitized at this point. So, highly possible. The first one is The Stand.
Okay.
Like, not going into it because coming soon to a year near you. But the second one is called, it's actually a screenplay called The Storm of the Century.
Okay.
And it's basically a giant mindfuck, which that scares me more than like a creature, because it's there. I mean, there is kind of a creature. It's very like there's a Leland Gaunt type bad guy,
Gotcha.
sort of, but it's about the negative power of human choice.
Mm.
So this is way scarier. This was not scary.
Nope. I agree. I look at it from the character's perspective for myself. If I was Frankie, I'd be more afraid of Pennywise than of El Cuco, because I'm not supposed to be, until the very end where I just get violently, just violated and everything like that. But that's kind of it. Pennywise would scare me. As an adult, as a 37-year-old, this one kind of freaks me the fuck out, coming from Terry's perspective, because he's a good dude. I try to be a good dude, try to do everything right, try to do it, and you could just get fucked over. And not in the sense of murdered or decapitated or whatever. Terry's life was ruined, regardless of the outcome of this trial, because it's the whole thing of, even if he was found not guilty with pure proof, there's still going to be that troll section online. Like, I see a few people in our chat right now that might fall into that. But they'll always be like, no, he was arrested for that. They had proof that he did that. And it would haunt him. And to me, it's like, now as an adult, this is one of the scarier ones. I can't say it's the absolute scariest. Jigsaw would be my number one. In just, I don't want to meet him. Just, I don't want to play games. But this is up there because just the realisticness of it is terrifying, of how this could happen in the wrong circumstances, even without the magical stuff. In the wrong circumstances, people go away to prison and get their lives ruined over less information. So that's kind of where my brain went with that question. All right. So, question number 3. In your opinion, of the police officers I could think of off the top of my head, while we were talking today, who is the best detective? Sheriff Pangborn, Bill Hodges, or Ralph Andrews? And why is it Bill Hodges? Sorry. So of those 3, like, just true detective, boots on the ground. And I'm throwing Sheriff Pangborn in there, first of all, because he maybe reminded me of him of Needful Things. So I added his name to the question. But I felt he was the other best police person we've had.
So Bill was the best because he was open to unusual solutions, and Ralph had to be convinced.
True. But what about Pangborn? Wouldn't you say he'd be?
He wasn't a detective. He was a sheriff.
I said, who was a better detective in the sense of detecting things, and not in the sense of
he wasn't though. Things kind of happened to him. I mean, he could when he was grilling the kid, but in general, I would not say what he did was detecting so much as it was like trying really hard to clean up some crazy ass shit.
Fair.
And it's Bill.
It's Bill.
Yeah, I know that. That's why I had.
I do got to give it to Ralph too, though. That, I mean,
I like Ralph.
He absolutely didn't fold on the evidence that he had. I mean, that could be a pro, that could be a con, for sure. In this case, I mean, he was still open to, once he started getting the conflicting information, he wasn't decided. When it came down to, his wife says, I know you have this information or whatever. Just go talk to him, right? She says if you can look in his eyes and ask him the question and figure it out from there, or just see how you feel, because you have two sets of information. And even after that, he said, I don't know, because he didn't know. There was no way in his rational brain, which I think is why Bill is better, but as a detective for non-paranormal things, I mean, he was still working the case, and he didn't quit on it. He kept it going to get to somewhere else. So definitely an honorable mention in our list of 3.
Agreed. And I would, to devil's advocate it, for Ralph's side, Ralph solved his case really quickly while he was still a detective. Bill, it took 2 years. And that was after the guy gave him the information and all that. Bill just said, you know what, I'm out. I don't have it. Ralph was like, nope, I'm going with it. And he solved the case. Was the right final solve?
Yes.
I mean,
Technically, yes. He
and
was
by all
technically
evidence, by all evidentiary standards, no jury would find him not guilty. Sorry, everything they had, apart from the alibi, like
Apart
just
from
based
the
on
exact opposite, the other story,
I
which
mean-
was the true story, which there was a lot
Well,
of firm evidence too.
yes, but had
All
that not
right,
existed,
boys.
had he just stayed at home. But anyway, no, Bill is the best. But so anyway, all right. My last question for the night: would it have been better to tell the public the absolute truth about El Cuco to clear Terry's name, or is it better left as a cover up with what they came up with?
Nobody's gonna fucking believe it. Nobody's gonna believe it. They're gonna think they're crazy.
Nobody's going to believe that the cover up.
No. No, they're
That's-
not gonna believe the El Cuco story. They won't believe it. They're gonna be like, there's no way in hell that some shapeshifter motherfucker sat down and took his DNA and turned into it. So that's a bunch of bullshit. Like, I don't care how half-assed a realistic sounding story is, it will be better than, so something supernatural happened and that's totally cool, guys. Okay. No. Sorry.
Yeah, like only the magazines that the Men in Black use to get the real alien news would be the ones running the story.
Yes. Get some Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones up in there, they'd be all over that.
Well, okay, let's spin it this way: of a actor was able to modify a face mask to look exactly like, like make it in a natural sense instead of just, oh no, we got the evidence wrong, or this new evidence came out, which I don't know. It's like I'd like to see. I agree. Yes, the best course of action, fucking cover it up, move on. Area 51, it doesn't exist. There you go. But I'd love to see Stephen King's take on actually telling the public about this shit. See, what could happen. And I guess that's where my brain went with it, because it's like I want to see that one time or another. Oh, we're getting dual cam. All right. Oh, froze. Oh, I know. Are you shares screen?
My internet accidentally got turned off by somebody stepping on the power cord. So I'm on my phone.
Oh, that's awesome.
Well, good recovery.
That
Good
works.
recovery.
That works well.
Good job, me.
Yeah, good job. So, but yeah, that's all the questions I had. So, all right, Melissa. So you don't have to talk much, or if you don't want, why don't you give us your favorite thing?
I got my favorite thing. I really like Ralph. Like, I was a big fan of him. I didn't buy into him at first. At first, I thought he was kind of a jerk, and then as the book went on, I was like, nope, I'm with you. I also really like Terry.
Yeah.
I'm sad he died.
All right, Luke.
I really loved the part where Holly lets everyone share their portions of evidence to get everyone in this group. Like when they all go down to Texas, right? And they all meet up and they are all just presenting their piece of the story from Ohio, from Flint City, Oklahoma, and everything else. And so she lets everyone go through like their portions of evidence to get all of the cards on the table, right? And then the way she is able to go and take what everyone says and realize that none of them can possibly wrap their minds around how that could be possible, and presents this improbable scenario of, you know, some kind of paranormal thing, if that's what we want to call it, some extraterrestrial type thing. And she's able to not only not seem absolutely off her rocker, like entirely, that they just discredit her and not even take, like, not one person takes it seriously, but she convinces a lot of people real quick to at least, like I said, create a platform of an attempt at believability, which then she's able to continually build up and up until it's like, yeah, no, this actually is what it is. And like, I was like really right, and I'm glad you guys didn't just shut me down, because you would still have no idea. I just love how she lets everyone be involved and gets them all to work together in an improbable sort of way, you know, because all of the possible things are off the table because it doesn't work. You know, Arthur Conan Doyle is referenced many times in this book, and so the only thing left is the improbable, and that's what she provides them, and I love the way that she convinces them to go along with it.
I definitely agree. So mine, obviously, I've said it 10 times this episode. The first, I'll say first half of the book, but really everything leading up to the arraignment and even Terry being shot, I'll include that. I loved it. I loved the proceduralness of it. I loved how the fuck is he gonna get out of this? Because just coming from my mentality of, if this goes to trial, there's the evidence, there's this evidence, it'll be a mistrial. I mean, I know it would end up being a mistrial. There's no possible way. You'd get 6 people saying guilty, 6 people saying not. But it's like, I wanted to see that build and growth and everything, and it just had me hooked. I remember I got to the 3-hour mark. I think I was first one there, or I got to the 3-hour mark at Luke when it was at the 6-hour, whatever. I'm like, oh my God, I don't know what the fuck's going on, but I'm fucking hooked in our little group chat thing. And Luke's like, oh, I'm 6 hours in and I'm really fucking in it. I'm like, okay. And it just hooks you in. The ending of the book, much like most Stephen King books, tends to drop off, in my opinion, but it still suffices, and it's a good story and it's enjoyable. But that first half, or first third, is just so good, so fucking good, especially if you don't know the story. It's, yeah, I highly recommend just read 6 hours in, you know, is the best way I can say it. You'll be happy.
Are you ready for me, Luke?
Sure. This is always a gamble. We'll see if it works.
It's gonna be great.
Share your screen. It's don't know why it loves to go to full screen, but we didn't lose it this time. The one time it just shut down like all of the video.
Yeah.
It was just like,
Yeah.
no, I don't think I can do that. But we got it here.
Awesome.
Are we still on screen? Oh, it sent it to my full screen, which I did not have on full screen.
Yeah, no,
Awesome.
Alright.
when it gets shared to you, it makes it full screen
Yes.
for
Gotcha.
some reason, no matter what. That's so silly.
Okay.
Thanks,
Well, that's
Zoom.
Zoom.
Thanks,
Yeah.
You know
Zoom.
what? You know what? Everything
So-
else has abandoned us, so we are going to live and die.
So, all
Here
right.
we go.
So for our podcast listeners, we have now shared our list of our top 23 Stephen King books. We've read all of these in the last 4 years, technically, but most 22 of them in the last 2 years.
Oh, this
At
is
the
good.
top, I'll just do the top 5. We have Dolores Claiborne, 11/22/63, Pet Cemetery, Dr. Sleep, and The Green Mile. And at the bottom, we have Cell, The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon, Salem's Lot, and Carrie. Everything else falls in the middle. Is the best way I can put it. So, Melissa, do you want me to give the direction, or?
I can. I'm stuck. So we are all going to, in our thing, put our number, and I don't know my number. I don't really want to put a number.
Either.
All right, I've got a number. All right,
Remember,
do you have a
it
number?
doesn't count. That's the one thing we have to remind ourselves. It doesn't count.
Well, neither does Pet
In this
Cemetery,
list.
but whatever. Okay,
Yeah.
ready? Are you ready?
No, I'm actually not. I have not put something
Luke,
in.
are you ready?
Ah, fuck.
Luke is ready. Benji is
All
ready.
right, I'm good. I'm good.
All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1, enter. I put 12, Luke put 6, Benji put 11, giving us a host average of 9. So it goes into 9 above Joyland.
I
Okay,
feel
good.
about that.
I'm actually okay with that.
I am okay with
I'm-
that too.
I'm actually, yes, very good with that because yeah, it's where did my list go? All right. Because yeah, Joyland, I do enjoy that book, but this one was better. Like if anything, the first third just had me hooked and I was on for the ride for it. I put it for 11 because I felt it was as good as Finders Keepers. I enjoyed it as much as that one. Still didn't enjoy as much as Mr. Mercedes. I did like it better than Gerald's Game, but I probably should have put it at 10, but I didn't like it as much as Needful Things. So I'm glad it ended up where it did. Actually, that's a perfect placement for it.
I still say the list is crazy. So
And we will have a slight correction by the end of next episode.
well, we're not correcting it. We're not changing this. We're just going to have our own versions of it.
True.
It's full now.
It is full now.
Because it is the outlier on a list of 24. We do have one more book in our
I
monthly
honestly do
book.
think we should take it off the list.
No.
Okay.
Because it's a Stephen King book. Like it's still just a book. It just
Fair
took us forever.
True.
Okay, final thoughts.
Final thoughts. This book, and I spoiled this real early, is very much a 3-part book that somewhat mirrors the 3-part Bill Hodges trilogy, right? And I totally appreciate that Benji loves just the first part the most, the first third, because it is very little hint of magic. I
Mhm.
mean, it's certainly ingrained once you know the rest of it that it was there the whole time. But there's no discussion that it is a possibility because it's more of just a confusion thing. But I didn't think it was as paint by the numbers as Benji mentioned. I thought it was still pretty creative in a different type of environment with a different set of characters. I mean, like we said, there are many similarities, but I thought it's easily still its own story. There are echoes, but I didn't think it was very much. There are ideas and characters that are similar, but the overall plot I thought was very much its own thing. And I would absolutely recommend this book in the top 10 that we've done.
I have gotten to the point where I really like the Stephen King-ishness of his stories. I like that I can find those connections. I went through a phase at some point that it annoyed me, and now I've like cycled back to this like nostalgia piece of it. And Luke and I actually talked about this sans Benji because he hadn't read the book yet, so whatever. And we had this conversation of like, we went through this phase from the early 2000s. So things like Doohickey and 11/22/63 and Joyland and even Revival, that they just like, they weren't Stephen King doing Stephen King. And even though Stephen King is not the horror author everybody thinks he is, right? He's just a great storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
Those books did not have this innate sense of paranormal and like, oh, you're part of the King world. And since we've gotten into Mr. Mercedes and so on, like he's bringing it back. And I think the Mr. Mercedes trilogy and this book are really good examples of like fading it back in. And now I'm ready for it. I am all over letting it come right back in and being full circle.
Fair. Yeah. And Again, I did not hate this book. I say paint by numbers because we have read so much Stephen King in the last 3 years, especially different Stephen King in the last 2 years, and I enjoyed it. Yes, it was very much different characters, different places, different twists, but very formulaic. It's not a bad thing. I mean, Harry Potter is extremely formulaic. Game of Thrones, kind of formulaic. At a point, if you look at it deep enough, it can get that way. So
what I'm hearing is because you have become such a Stephen King, so immersed in the Stephen King world, you're able to find, like,
yes,
it's just what he does.
Yes, and so it's not a bad book by any means. It's fantastic. It's a fantastic book. It's my own personal just overindulgence of it that has dried me out. I still highly recommend this book to anyone that wants to read it. I'd probably say give this one a read. I like Will Patton. I've liked him for the whole Mystery series and Bill Hodges trilogy, and I did like his performance in this one. But I kind of wish I would have read this one just to get the character voices for my own perspective of it. It's one of the few that we've also listened to Will Patton on the last 4 of the last 5 books we've read. And so his voice has very much been ingrained. So I would have, personally, I would have liked to read this one. But it's definitely a great book. The first half is intriguing. It's enthralling. The rest of it's good. It's a good ending. It's a solid story, so there's nothing wrong with it at all. That's kind of all right. So with that said, this is going to wrap us up, and make sure you're following us on our social medias at Floats Down Here on Twitter and Instagram. This is why I had to pause while you were talking about this, because I hadn't come up with my comment for this. Send us your blue jeans doused with more semen than humanly possible to floatsdownhere@gmail.com.
Just need it.
Make sure you're checking out.
Send us your paranormal goo.
Your paranormal goo. There you go. I had one other one, but I was like, nope, that's too far. That one just was, that one wasn't the too far one. There was another one that came in mind. But anyway, make sure you're checking out the podcaststack.com where you can find all of our shows, and subscribe and rate us on iTunes and on YouTube under Drawbridge Media.
This show and all of the shows at thepodcast.com and Drawbridge Media are produced with the love and support of our wonderful Imaginary Legion patrons. You can go to patreon.com/stayimaginary to learn more about our reward tiers today.
Join us in December for our last book of the year. We are reading The Institute. If you've ever wondered what happens to those kids like Carrie, or like the girl from Firestarter, those kids with a little bit of paranormal ability, right? Your telekinetics and your mind readers. What happens to them when the government gets involved? Well, we get to find out.
You'll float too.
Stay imaginary.
Thanks.